Welcome to the Soul Awakened Leadership Podcast. Soul Awakened leaders are courageous innovators and pioneers who embody a deep knowing of our interconnectedness and operate from a mindset of co-creation in service to all of life. They surrender their existence completely to a higher organizing principle that is leading them beyond separation and competition and opens up the potential for an entirely new way of being on this planet in a time of metamorphosis. In this podcast, I share cutting-edge perspectives and invite the voices of leaders who don't create followers but inspire others to step into their true power and essence. And in this episode, I'm in conversation with Trost. He's not only one of my best friends and allies on the path, but also one of the most radical, courageous, and unconventional human beings I know. I admire how deeply he trusts his intuition, his inner guidance and truth, even if it completely contradicts what others perceive and will hold as acceptable. He dares to go to the edges of the human experience and, like few other people, carves out the polarities and contradictions of the human game. And he has also committed himself to one of the, if not the biggest taboo topics in our society, sexuality. The reason why I wanted to record this conversation with him is that I see both of us aligning towards a shared vision, but coming from very different angles. Where I come from Soul Awakened leadership, he comes from sexuality and the Tantric spaces he creates as a path to the divine. Enjoy this conversation. It is my greatest joy to be here with you today, Rainer. We have been on this path for, you reminded me, more than 10 years now. So I can't wait to jump into this topic. But also to give those who don't know you, to give them a bit of a context. Maybe you want to share a few turning points of your life and what shaped your path and who you are today, to introduce yourself.
I was born in West Berlin in a, let's say, like a post Second World War atmosphere. So basically my mother was still experienced the war herself. And so the whole atmosphere that I came in was like Cold War, divided city, divided Berlin. And that was basically the ground where I grew up. And in a very short time, I could see where materialism leads, and I dropped out. I went to India. I've been in India for almost like 11 years. I found a guru. I was part of a monastery, and so trying to escape suffering, basically. A puristic spiritual path, very genuine, very traditional, and very deep roots. And I found basically everything there. But somehow it brought me back to the West, and then I had to face what I tried to shake off. Yeah, so that was identity, existence in this world, sexuality, polarity, being a man. And so I started to have a look at psychology and healing modalities and sexuality as well in the form of Tantra. And also, so basically when I came from India, I had to go in any direction and look under every stone, whatever I could find there, parties, hedonistic scene, psychedelics, psychology, as I said, philosophies, you name it. And so I came across Tantra, and I started to practice, and this is how it went. So I had in my life, I had basically both, everything, the purest spiritual side, and then the hedonistic psychology healing path. And now something is coming together, like a synergy. So in short.
Yeah, what a contrast from the monastic life as a monk living in celibacy and completely sober for more than 10 years to the complete opposite of really living the fullness of life and the ecstasy and the material world, and now seeing how both are aligning in a deeper synthesis. I really feel that coming together in you in a deeply embodied way.
And I really, in the deep into the spiritual field, when you go to the Himalayas, when you go to Buddhist or Hindu or any orthodox spirituality, it is very much understandable why everybody is so protective, because there is something there. And it's very shielded and protected, and you try to protect this energy. And still I could not believe that there's an opposite to love. I couldn't, for me, so I everywhere in the temples in India, all spirituality, and even you name it, all the gurus and worldwide, everywhere it came out that, oh, they had sex, and sex in the temples, sex in the monastery, sex with their disciples, and they fell down from grace, and I was like, what's happening here? Then when I went to the hedonist side, back to materialism, I was wondering why nobody sees the spirituality in sexuality. But sexuality, lust, and love is used as a purpose to control each other. So very interesting. So basically the spiritualists, they couldn't see the value of sexuality, and those who have a lot of sex couldn't see the value of spirituality. So I'm wondering, like, hey, yeah. So this is why I became so interested in finding the middle path, basically.
Beautiful. Yeah, I can see how you're building these bridges between the worlds that seemingly don't connect with each other, but are so deeply related and embedded
Exactly.
with each other. So how would you describe the work that you're doing today?
Basically, I try to apply everything that I learned, any spiritual teaching, any learnings that I got from, like, any metaphysical knowledge, anything that's about subconscious, I try to apply everything in the tantric space or in tantric sexuality. Basically, I see the sexual union or the process towards that. I see it as the nucleus. I found that I do not even have to go far. I find everything in there. This is the creation center. I found that this is the center of creation. It's like this little. This is the core. Whatever you do there happens also around us. So this is what I found out. So I can, when I how I do sex, this is how I relate with life, and even higher forces or the source of everything. Some people call it God. For me, interestingly, I was studying the scriptures for so long to later realize, when we ask ourselves, where do we come from? Where's all this coming from? Why we don't just go back? We ask our mother, where do I come from? And if she's honest, she says, from down there. So what happened? Dad and I had a good time, a very good time. And then something happened, like a big bang, like boom. And then, yeah. And now you're here. Okay, I thought, like, let's dive deeper into this. And I just now going basically the way that where I came from, I try to go back that path. And yeah, I mean, now it's obvious for me, if you want to search the source, or like, there must be something in there. There must be the core of everything must be in the sexual act. And even I found out, even let's say, oh, something must have gone wrong. in some way. Let's say, oh, I'm, you know, something, I'm not happy in life, and the world is weird. So let's say creation, there something is wrong. Then I realize that also in there, in the sexual act, how my intention is and how I do it and how I prepare and how my attitude is, you can see everything can be solved and understood in the sexual union. Very interesting.
Yeah, you've inquired so deeply into this microcosm and zoomed so deeply in that you can see the whole of life unfolding in this fractal pattern of how we live sexuality, and see how everything that we see in the world, you know, ultimately the complete macrocosm is a reflection of that microcosm and how we relate to that. And so I can see that once we bring more awareness into that, bring more healing and more conscious choice into the way that we relate sexually, it'll transform everything in our life from that.
Right.
And what would that mean for politics? What would that mean for business? What would that mean, you know, for the vision of where we're going as humanity? So that's really powerful. And I'm curious to dive in a little deeper. But first, I'd be curious, and I know that a lot of the work that you're doing is just so far away from words and so difficult to describe with words, but can you give a few pointers of what happens in these spaces that you're creating?
It's very simple, actually. You know, first of all, we are creating, it's in Sanskrit, we call it yantra. That means the field. How do I want to relate in life? Where do I want to live? How do I care for my surrounding, right? So yantra, that means the tantric room has a certain atmosphere. Everything is there. Paraphernalia, hygiene, music, energy is pure. Everything is there. It's a space where things can happen. It's basically also inside, the space inside, first of all, creating a space of, you know, like everything can happen, nothing has to happen, of creating a field of possibilities. So the first element is really relaxation, honor, gratitude, relaxation, and coming, you know, into the center. It's basically we return to zero, and now we create a field of like plain consciousness, just like that. Everybody who's entering there can feel very free and relaxed and welcome and connected. This is the first. So everything that has field is the first, yantra, and then comes mantra. Mantra means intention. Where intention goes, energy flows, right? So when we as intention, we hold liberation as intention, then so many things fall into that. So we try to put our intention very high and connect to the highest that we possibly can, and invite that, like descending process. We invite a certain quality into the field, but we're also reaching up with our intention to liberation first. Liberation. It is all about liberation, because if the intention is just plain sense gratification, where's the difference? So conscious sexuality or tantra goes just a little bit deeper and recognizes the state of like the state of bondage or suffering, and try to get out of this darkness into the more light atmosphere. So therefore, so mantra is intention, and then comes action, tantra. Yantra, mantra, tantra. Field, intention, and then really doing it, action. So in this way, we are connecting the dots. Yeah, what is really, when you in the simplest way, what is happening? It is love making. The intent is to make love. it's a verb, actually. Love is a verb. It's an act. It's a decision. It's a choice. It's a beautiful choice. This is what's happening in the tantric room in all respects.
And what I've always so admired about you is your courage to really embody a degree of permission that allows others to follow into that space, into that quality, to be this embodied permission slip that really sets a bar for others, what is acceptable. And I feel that within the spaces that I've experienced with you, there's so much permission for all aspects of our humanity. And really recognizing that that is such a crucial aspect of love, that love isn't deciding, and these are the parts that are welcome, these are the parts that I don't want to have here. And that is already such a big difference to how many people experience sexuality, that sexuality still is a performance where certain aspects are being put to the front and other aspects are not welcome and what are not allowed. So I'm curious to inquire a little deeper what the thresholds and the limitations are that you encounter in these spaces, because people could imagine like, okay, cool, that's a very sensual sexual space where it's about the sexual act, but I imagine before it gets to that point there are many things that are actually in the way to really allow love, because we've been so conditioned to not allow love or have a very limited perspective of what love actually means and love making.
Yes, both parties have to be open. There can be even more than one person in the space, but then it becomes even more. There's necessity to be even more slow. Really, the most group settings are far too quick. Really, if we could just allow ourselves to slow down completely, to let go of any expectations. Of course, there's some expectation, but of like what to do, what should, like projecting pictures or like desires. And there's also necessity to have the greedy parts of ourselves in check, because there's a greedy part who's acting out of lack, and the corresponding part to that is the aggressor or the frustrated being. So there's a greedy man inside me, and there's a frustrated one. And the greedy one is, and the unfulfilled desires create frustration, and the frustrations are act out between men and women alike. Nowadays, everywhere, social media, women against men, and it's all sexual frustration at the end. It's all unfulfilled desires. So I have to be conscious of that. So of course, as a leader, as when I accompany somebody in the space, the old paradigm doesn't work with me anymore. So that in itself is like interesting for most that work with me. They're like, okay, wow, this is not working. So what's working? I help and encourage everybody to unlearn first, to let go what you thought you are, what you think you are, what you think is important. For example, fixation on orgasm, ejaculation, of course. These are the gross conditionings that we carry. But really everything that is stressful, and we don't need stress. Everything has to be really in a feeling of acceptance and relaxation, and because we find when you there's this in Italy, there's this statue, David, by Michelangelo. And a friend of Michelangelo asked him when he was done, wow, out of one piece of stone, how did you do that? Proportions, all perfect. I mean, this is like an anatomy study object, basically. It's just perfect. And Michelangelo said, I just removed everything that wasn't David. So basically the start of it all is to, allow everything to show up that wants to show up, but also to encourage to let go of conditioning and everything that is between yourself and the more deeper parts. because really we are all, what I found and what I've always find is that we are sexually, everyone is naturally sexually competent. There's a natural sexual competence to everyone. Interestingly, most people are totally ashamed of themselves and they don't feel competent. And so I try to encourage everybody to find that natural, natural sexuality.
And there's something in the way that you speak about this deconditioning process that I want to focus on a bit more, because my sense is, and you also spoke about a new paradigm, my sense is there is obviously a lot of sexual trauma stored in our bodies. When we enter these spaces, this is what surfaces first. But from the work that you're doing, I know that you're not so much focusing on trauma and all these stories that are present. And with the work that I'm inquiring into with the Soul Awakened Leadership, my sense is also that, yes, we can do 40 years of therapy and do the linear healing process, but there's also a way that if we surrender our personal small story and really invite this larger intention, the mantra, as you described, then a space opens up that is bigger than our own individual story. So I wonder how you're working with these contractions and these stuck places in our bodies where we have trauma, and how you invite a transcendence of the narrative of the individual trauma in these spaces.
Of course, at some, there is pain. Sometimes the body shows some pain, or then we just work with consciousness. Basically, you apply consciousness to pain and you go together through it, feeling through pain. And, so this is the process of de-armoring. Wherever there's a painful spot, you stay there with empathy and okay. And then you see it by itself, it becomes soft and the pain is transforming. And the person goes to a process and you just there. It's not such a big magic, really. It's just encouraging consciousness and encouraging to stay with the pain, to face the fear, to face the pain. This is simply encouragement. Yeah. So many people, they do 20, 30 years of trauma work. I do not see it shifting very much, because the positive choice, the allowance to be bigger than all of that, is lacking very often. So what I do, encourage from the very beginning, I encourage to be more of who you really are in essence. It's not that I deny trauma or I suppress trauma, but there is a much more powerful person behind the walls, a creator, which is simply not yet, has to make a choice. So I offer and I encourage to make a new choice, because we can do that trauma and healing thing really for the rest of our lives. I know definitely, I know people who are 70, they do this for 50 years, more or less, they don't change. There is a very loving and ecstatic being inside of us. There might be necessity for some trauma work, some release to encourage relaxation, many things. But there's also something bigger there. Mm-hmm. It's a choice. It's all about the choice.
And I've always been impressed with the capacity of your intuition. When you're working with people, how deeply you can see them and you can see beyond the persona that they have created. And in this way, also inviting them into this potential. But I also know that it can bring up a lot of resistance, that people are confronted with a truth that you're sensing that they're not even aware of. And if you mirror that back to them, they resist with a story of like, no, this is not who I am. I wouldn't do something like that. But it turns out that's actually the deepest truth. So how do you guide them to create space for that as well?
I mean, basically, first of all, I trust whoever comes in touch with me is ready to some extent. This is number one. How can it be that the ingredient that I carry, or the energy that I have, or the experience that I have, so a person is attracted to me, how can it be that she or he is so far away from? So there's some resonance. So I trust that, first of all. I think that's very easy to understand. The second thing is, of course, there is the status quo, right? Some of us call it the ego or the mind machine. That is simply a tool that serves us to hold our persona together. So of course, so when your persona, your ego is limited, then getting in touch with information to get you into liberation or to expand on what you think is possible, or who you think you are, of course. So first, basically the limitation, the edges, it's, you're stretching the boundaries, you're stretching the comfort zone, and at one point, of course, fear kicks in. So that's a natural reaction of the energetic construct. Fear is a feeling of like, whoa, now my sense of self is challenged. And it doesn't matter, you can say, but it's a very good thing. The ego doesn't care. The ego simply is like, hey, wait a sec, I have to protect that being. I have to protect who I think I am. So first of all is, of course, understanding. You have to be very empathic with the situation. Of course, this is I mean, we all been there. We're all in the same boat, more or less. So we try to encourage. It's all about encouragement to go a little bit further, and it's a little bit like I remind people of their superpower. They get intrigued. They listen to me and they think like, oh yeah, he's right. My ego is like, oh no, this can't be. I had already clients. They said, wow, this is enough now. I ask like, why? This is too good. So, the ego has interesting arguments. This is too beautiful. There is something like too beautiful. And sometimes I ask them, how beautiful is too beautiful? Wow. And then they're like, wow, yeah, whoa. So how should I navigate? So of course, I try to help people to liberate, and then also to navigate a more liberated state. But really, the ego makes it very... The ego makes out of something very beautiful and natural, something super complicated, something crazy. It's the opposite. When you come to your center, you realize everything is so simple, everything is sweet. I have power, I can hold it. Actually, there is no problem, but this comes later. The ego says otherwise. The ego has the order to let me forget myself, to carry me away from that. So that's what the program I agreed on. Now I want to go out of a program. So it needs the warrior. It needs a little bit like a warrior. I have to go through this. So really, I work with people who are ready. They come to me, and one client said, I asked her, did you have a look at the webpage? Did you inform yourself what it's all about? And she said, like, no, I simply got an inner prompting, and on purpose, I didn't read anything about it, so my mind doesn't tell me I shouldn't go. So she tricked her mind, basically, like, oh, I have to do this, and no thinking, do the appointment and just do it. So this is, I appreciate, because this is the warrior spirit. So the warrior liberates the queen or the king. You need a little bit to get out of the bush and go through things. You need a little bit like a resolute attitude. You really have to, there should be some intention why you do things. Get from A to B somehow.
Yeah, and it reminds me of martial arts and the way that it is required to not really see the other as an enemy, but to see the opponent actually as part of the larger picture. So when I work with coaching clients, one of the first things that I do is I support people to find gratitude for the ego and how the ego supported them to survive up until now. But oftentimes they're also, as you described, at the point where they're ready to recognize what they've done so far has brought them to this point, but it's holding them back to where they actually want to go. So to, in a way, get the ego on board and see it as an ally to support and do the Aikido moves that are necessary in order to gain the trust of the ego, to see like, it's not against you, we're fighting not against you, but we need to go beyond what we've done so far. And you're also not fulfilled. The price of what you've been carrying so far is getting too big for you to hold. And the vision of where you could be going is so beautiful that it's worth bringing up that energy and bringing up that warrior spirit to actually transcend it.
So yeah, it's a little bit like the mind can be your worst enemy in a sense of like dragging you away from knowledge, dragging you away from your potential, or it can be your best friend. The ego or the mind has to be subordinate to the heart. Mm-hmm. In our society, most of the time it's opposite. The heart is enslaved, and the ego, it's basically an artificial intelligence. So now everybody, the heart and sex and everything that's beautiful and worth living is like serving certain control structures. I would turn it around. I would use the control structures to build streets and ways towards liberation and fulfillment of the heart. So the ego is not there's no bad, nobody can be free from ego, but we can serve. The ego can become servant towards the heart and the divine. So it has to be, so then it's in its proper place. Even dark elements, even, in duality, we have everything. There's power in darkness as well. It's not that we cannot, everything can be used in service to the divine and the heart. So this is what I encourage, to try to get the ego on board. And yeah. Mm-hmm. So there's different things, to go through resistance. Even, okay, the most extreme thing is that if a person is really is resisting very strongly, then I let her or him resist. And I tell her very frankly that I do not support that anymore. I can only serve if he or she is still connected to to a pure intention. And if I see the ego wants his or her way, then I let him or her have it. But I say, this is my boundary here. I do not serve your ego. And I even take, I consider that also service to the heart, because I protect the heart space, mine and him or hers. So yeah, it might be that the person is upset with me because I do not play that game. And even that I can take. So I'm not, at the end of the day, I'm not there to please people's conditioning or people's ego. And in the most extreme case, of course, it can be that they're not very happy with my boundaries, or that I do not continue. But this is what I stand behind myself. I stand for that.
Yeah, I can feel your love for truth in that, and how you're not serving the person in front of you, but the divine being that is actually behind the persona that it's masquerading as.
Yeah, and I try to represent a certain quality that's in all of us at that moment. So maybe the person that one day, maybe in a year or 2 years, she will come to a point where she's like, okay, now I see the consequences of my choices and how powerful I actually am in creating the consequences of my life. And maybe years ago it wasn't very pleasant to hear that, but I cannot.
I'm curious what happens once you move beyond this point of resistance. And in Khalil Gibran's The Prophet, there's this beautiful line, tell us about love. And I think this is probably what awaits once the ego has been befriended and is in support of the space that you're creating. What can we imagine to experience in these spaces once that has been aligned?
You realize something, that this is what you have always carried with you. Oh, I always desired that. Like my whole life, actually. It feels like, wow, my entire life I was like covered with a blanket. And I was beneath that blanket having some desire or some longing. And that experience you can make, and especially in a sexual union with love and connection to the divine, this is so powerful. The experience is so powerful that it very easily transports you beyond that ego state. This is why it is so. This is why I recommend it as a. I mean, I can sit and, of course, I can sit and meditate. I can continue studying the scriptures. I can hold back and try to fight my sexuality. I can make my relationship life very complicated, study psychology and healing, everything. I can do that. It's all good. But having the most beautiful, delicious love making as a spiritual tool towards liberation. I mean, I tried many things. I prefer that. Mm-hmm. This is such a. It's not even the only difficulty is really the discipline and make the right choices. But really, it is also very easy. Every child can do that. It's interesting how easy it is, actually, how natural, how easy it is, and how beautiful it is, and fun, and yeah. And of course, when you lived in a temple and in monastery for like 11 years, you wonder why did nobody tell me about it? And then you go into school and like in the normal world, and nobody tells you about it. The education, sexual education, is nothing. Nobody explains to you the art of love making and meeting, like all your longings and all your desires are met, and you experience God and liberation. Where are the schools for that? I really wonder. It's very, very interesting. So, and even in our, there are so many fields who are like sex positive, but I see still the surrender part. And most people, they don't know where to surrender. So everything is basically carved out, sexual experiences and play parties and Burning Man, you have the orgy tent and everything. And I don't know, of course, many people have very, very mystical experiences when it comes to sexuality, but still I think the potential is endless, limitless. And we haven't even tapped into anything. I think like that could really change really the entire world when it is treated differently. I mean, if you have that certain lovemaking, you feel into the room, the atmosphere. This is the atmosphere that you normally only find in holy places. The silence that is so loud in the room after that meeting, most people must know that atmosphere. So we're not even yet really looking into this matter very deeply. It's very interesting. I mean, if we would do research like KI or any other field, then I don't know where we would be in sexuality. But it is really totally suppressed, and everybody tries. But there is one thing to really, the surrender thing, right? Going over the border and in the face of death, really like facing death, ready to die. When you say, okay, to have a certain experience, I'm ready to die. I let go now. That's necessary. And I think in all ways, whatever we do, this is a good to really try to close a chapter, leave the past behind, and make that leap into the unknown. Trust and jump into this and surrender.
And then it turns out that every death is just a new birth and a new beginning into something even bigger, even more magnificent, and a transition. And so we're coming from that microcosm of the experience that you created, where people move beyond the limited idea of who they are into the next cycle of their life, where they experience that whatever they learned in these spaces actually isn't a peak experience that is distant and unrelated to the everyday life. So I'm curious how you support them, or what you experience, how they integrate that into their normal existence, into their everyday lives. How do you even make sense of an experience like that?
I encourage to never stop. I get mails, oh, wow. Just today, yesterday, that's just normal. I get mails, feedbacks like, so much love I feel. I'm getting scared. What should I do? I say, no, so I explain them where fear is coming from or can come from, but basically enjoy the ride and keep loving. I would say that's what the world needs right now. If somebody has a session with you or a meeting with you and says like, oh, I fall in love with you, that's a problem, isn't it? I say, no. Why should that be a problem? Keep going in this direction. I encourage to stay and go on. And I'm generally, so I'm very careful and considerate, and of course the care for the thing itself has a certain power. If my intent is really, if I don't have to worry for anybody, because the world is already crazy. So then when your mind is telling you, oh, it's too much love, it's too good, I'm going crazy. So you can go this way crazy or that way crazy. You die this way or you die that way. So I prefer to die a sweet death that I choose by myself than to be dragged along the choices of others and die anyhow. So I encourage everything. Can I cry? Can I love? Can I show emotions? Yes, please. Not less. Please, more of it.
And I see the Luke Skywalker move of going to the center of the Death Star and allowing it to implode from the center, because basically our entire capitalistic system is built on this fear and lack mentality. But once people experience that they have access to that, and not just through the support of you, but that is something that they have innately within themselves, it's ultimately empowering and liberating from all the consumption, from all the materialism, from all the identifications, even from the desire, why should I work in order to get appreciation, love, and acceptance, if I already know that that is who I am, if that is what I have within me that I can access through the sexual act, but also beyond that, then basically the capitalistic system collapses from within, and all the destructive and extractive aspects of it will not have a use anymore.
Yeah. And the sexuality, as I said, it's just the gate. The yoni, right, is like the female genital it's the gate where we're coming from. It's really like a portal. You can go back into, you're coming from somewhere totally, you're coming, maybe you come from past lives even, you can go back. It's not rare that I get during sessions that I get downloads and trance like visions. Everything is there. Even all the trance states so easily induced. You don't need drugs. You have the perfect You have to, I mean, it's the perfect high. There cannot be more of a perfect balance in your body of hormones, and it's just perfect. But of course, you have to, like in everyday life, it's the same. Inside the tantric room, outside the tantric room. If I'm not a sovereign being in this world, if I'm always afraid to lose control, I will always have a fear to lose control in bed as well. Basically, what is happening in bed reflects my life also. So one can check and maybe create more of a balance. I mean, it would be great if a millionaire would get also a feedback of like a millionaire, again, having sex like, or making love like a millionaire. That would be good. Also spiritual teachers. There are so many spiritual teachers. I would say ladies should check how they are in their lovemaking. If they really can embody and bring that knowledge down to the root chakra, down to the 3D level. Because otherwise, why do I talk something and I still live in 3D, but I talk things which are from I don't know what? So this is a good test, and I think everybody should check their pulse and see how much of their intelligence and theories and philosophies, how much I can bring to the creation center in the bedroom. How am I with my life, with myself, should be reflected in lovemaking. It's a beautiful practice, and there are so many realizations coming from there. It's just such a simple thing.
Yeah, and I'm just tapping into the sense of what it would look like if we were all coming more from this place. What would that mean for romantic relationships, for example? Because if a client says to you, hey, I'm falling in love with you, there's nothing wrong with the love. When it gets complicated is when it forms an attachment of like, now you are my primary partner and you cannot continue this work because I want exclusive access to you, and these kind of stories that the mind and the ego creates, which are again dropping out of the body of love and of the limitlessness of who we really are. So love isn't the problem, but the stories that we tell ourselves about what love looks like and what it has to mean in the 3D world, that is what creates the limitation then.
Yeah, it's all about actually the connected living of life is different. And the separated living of life, there's always gaps everywhere. And then there comes addiction to fill those gaps. And of course, we are on the way of learning and searching for truth. But I must say, from my own experience, I did that myself, and I see it everywhere. Before having a sound relationship with myself and where I'm coming from, having some answers to the question, who is my shelter when everything breaks away, for example, like the God question and relationship to myself. When there's no connection, it's all just confusion. Then I go into a relationship, I call that, basically I want to touch, kiss, have sex, make up. And then I call it a relationship, and I come from that decentralized, scattered place. And then I'm in that relationship, and then I'm dreaming of open relationships. It's all irrelevant. When you start first with yourself and the God question, and then coming in contact and in touch with the person, and then the next and the next and the next, more connected, more in a more aligned way, it's a different way of life. I think if you would put 200 people on an island, really only do things where they feel it comes from a connection from above, they're aligned with their higher self, and they're coming from, something is coming through them, some guidance from above. When they just come together, when they feel really aligned and connected from a place of love and centeredness, world would look different. And I tell you, when men would serve with their physical strength and with their abilities to hold space for that. The ladies, they would fill the connection they would connect the dots in a very natural way. So of course, everything is there. We can, it's not that the world can't change. Option is there enough. It's in our hands, actually. It's not magic. It's not witchcraft. It's actually very simple. Take your time and make conscious steps. Mm-hmm. So what I see now, when you say, oh, sexuality, be free, that means, attachment is wrong. I have to fuck with everyone. And then you go to a person, like I was like that. If you would have asked me, hey, Rainer, you always speak about open relating and things like this. So tell me, how much do you relate openly? I would have told you, not at all. I'm actually attached in one relationship, always complaining that I need freedom. So it's irrelevant, really. The proof is in the pudding. First, come into your connection, create a conscious field, come with the proper intention, and then see what is working or not. Because when the divine energy is flowing through you, you will realize, you will see, and then you see, oh, now the dots are connected. Now we are talking. From the core of the tantric space, you can create a different society. Everything else is just talking. Spiritual teachers, rich people, and their wives, they say, I do not feel loved by my man. So then what is the use? And vice versa. So we're scattered here and there, disconnected, and we just talk. So this is a problem, and there's a solution.
And yet the power that we're tapping into in these spaces is so wild, so raw, so untamable, that if this higher alignment with the divine isn't there and it gets hijacked by the ego, it can also be very destructive. If I'm just following my flow just in the present moment and be completely reckless with the boundaries of others in that way, or just not living my life with this focus and center, then it can also reap havoc in our relationships, in our lives, in a way that is ultimately detrimental to also our awakening if we're not surrendering to the divine, but surrendering to the lower forces and the lower drives in our bodies.
Yeah, this is the discipline, because really, my experience till now is that the connected and aligned experience is a gate, is protected. No, the ego cannot go there. It's like a club where you have to subordinate your ego to the heart. And when the bouncer, that should be actually your consciousness should be the bouncer, and say like, oh, is the ego subordinate? Does the person know about his ego? That means his shadow sides and his light sides, but he's conscious and he's not suppressing, but now he's coming to, he wants liberation, she wants liberation. Is she serious? Okay. So then you get entrance. So everybody else who's like in this, oh, if it's too much, then it's dangerous and it's crazy, I go crazy. This is all ego. So really, if all this fear mongering about sexuality nowadays, there's so many people, they're like almost, sexuality is almost synonymous with rape in many circles. What do you think? Is it really reflected as the most beautiful thing in the world? It's the most complicated, the most feared, the most complex, and so much like transgressing boundaries and rape. It's associated so negatively. This is everything that the ego gets from playing with sexuality. If you leave that room and you cross the gate, then you realize a bit about this. The movie Matrix, and this is it's quite a shocking experience to come out of this experience. Then
you've seen behind the veil.
Yeah. It doesn't get easier. No, the ego thinks, oh, nice. Now I have a beautiful sexuality, and then we create beautiful communities, and everything is in sync and in flow. It won't, it will get better and worse at the same time. It's a paradox. And, you know, it's the whole package. And you wouldn't want to separate death from life anymore. You see, these are one, and it's like it's such an intimate relationship. It's the whole package. If you want to control, but just a little bit, and I don't know, and let's see, and let's keep it nice. It is life transforming. Basically, it's life itself. So when you come to a point of opening for life itself, we talk about Kundalini a lot, and Kundalini is nothing else but life itself. And somebody asked me, oh, Rainer, what can I do to awaken my Kundalini? I said, like, there is no, I mean, maybe you are sleeping, but Kundalini isn't sleeping. Life is never sleeping. It's about you opening yourself to life to the fullest, and then you experience the whole package.
Which is a beautiful segue to a question that I've been intentionally holding back in a conversation that we previously had when we were talking about where's all of this going. And we've been joking about these memes and this trend of make it more, where the artificial intelligence is asked to generate images that get even more shiny, even more beautiful, even more exuberant. And so I'm curious to hear your vision of where all of this is taking us if we're tapping into this potential. What's the vision for humanity?
Interesting. You know what picture I got? When we go into this and we're expecting something shiny to happen, for example, having a vision. I thought, hey, everybody just has to come to their senses, come into their center, create a relationship with God, and then meet each other for the purpose of channeling life itself and channeling God's energy through sexual union, Tantra. So I was imagining a Tantric society. Everything is different. But now when you were asking me, so I went into this and I came out that nothing will change at all. I was a little bit amazed just now. I'm like, whoa, everything like this, that shitty? Yeah, interesting. So you got me there. I wish I could have told you that, hey, I have a vision for the perfect society. It's all different. I was imagining like everybody has a bag and you have a tantra, you have oil and a lungi. And of course, we can do that. We can do that. But when you tap, when now I imagine I tap more into the experience that brings me to accept myself even more. And it makes me so humble. This world doesn't need to be changed because it isn't real in the first place. And as I tapped a little bit into reality, I realized it can't be that something changes by tapping into reality, because this world is supposed to be like that. This is the antidote. You want to remove this? This is why we came here for. And now the real world is already existing. Yeah. You can say like, okay, let me spend the next 50 years on making an unbelievable community. Or then you say like, hey, God, can you help me to create that community where everybody prays to you and everything is new and divine? He can also say, here's the exit, just go. We are already there. The party is already happening. And you want to create a party on the North Pole. Why you want to create a paradise in Antarctica or in the Sahara? Why you're not just joining us? Why don't you just come back and don't worry about things which are there for a purpose?
Developing the technology to escape to Mars.
Of course, that's fun, Yeah. I don't know. So it's very interesting.
Nisargadatta has this quote, always under ready, the other world is this world rightly seen. So yeah, totally resonate. It's beautiful. I love that.
Because now when we are coming closer, everybody, it's an individual thing. And then I thought, how many people will I meet in this life? Now I'm this age. What should I do? How many people can I reach? How can I? Should I attract 1,000 or 100,000? Even if I would attract with this what I experience, if I can inspire 100,000, that's nothing.
Tony Robbins of sexuality.
So then I'm like, is it really that is it just for me? Can I just be happy without preaching? Can I just take it and be happy? And can I go if I want to? Or do I first have to rescue others and do projects? It's so interesting.
Yeah.
And telling others about it. And then you meet others and they say like, no, I don't want this. Or you meet others, they say, here, I'm at the same point as you. That's great. But let's meet. And then I'm tapping into this field and I'm tapping out of all these rescuer, victim, aggressor dynamics. And I wouldn't even want to change it really anymore. I rather go more deeper into the positive world. It is really less and less the desire to change something. But to tap in more, like, be it. And then you think like, oh, but also somebody told me about it. Yeah, you can tell somebody about it. But so then the question about balance, it doesn't need much. It needs a house, it needs a roof over your head. Maybe you have children or a relationship. It doesn't need much. And there's also this experience is also, it transcends. So some people will say, oh, sexuality, it becomes boring. In 5 years being together, everything becomes like a little bit. So now we're looking for more. We go to the poly tent, at the festival, and now we explore. There is nothing to explore, really, because what you're looking for is already inside you, but within your relationship or outside of a relationship, if you're not feeling it yet, then you haven't decided yet for it. But I haven't found it. Theoretically, I would have never had to change any relationship. Maybe for any reason, but not for the reason that the sexuality is getting boring. Then something really, I know for sure you can have a lifelong, a super fulfilling sexuality because you do not have sexuality with another person's ego anymore, but with another from heart to heart and with the divine, and the energy is it's always fresh. It's never, because it's not under time and under so time doesn't rule there. So it cannot get boring, because anything that's under time gets boring because after the honeymoon phase I'm bored. But if you connect to the unlimitedness, there is no boring. So therefore the question is, now when you come together, and one thing I want to say from experience, it's very interesting now to explore co-creation in the tantric room, where you see that what is actually necessary. You can explore at the nucleus, coming together sexually, 3 or 4 people. You can see the dynamics very clearly, what it needs actually to come into alignment. And then all kinds of enviousness, greed, and non-cooperation stop. The ecstasy of the one person inspires the ecstasy of the other one, and vice versa. And really, even it might be that one couple is copulating, having sex, the other two in the room are feeling the same energy inside them. So all of them are tapped into the sexual channel. It's very interesting, and I can really recommend to look deeper into this, because this is totally, we have not even gone into deeper research there. I think we have not even, so very interesting. All the kinds of brotherhood and sisterhood that we are talking about can be reconciled in the tantric space when it is in proper alignment. Then you see actually how sisterhood can work and how brotherhood can hold space together. And there's nothing more fulfilling like that. It's very fulfilling. Wow. Community experience.
Yeah, I can sense, how team development, organizational development, community development in the future, including this element, even just to a small degree, would be completely transcending the current paradigm of what we're living, and expanding these practices is super potential. I can see that.
I mean, I know a person that a man that I had an experience with. The connection and the depth of our relationship is beyond everything, because what we have experienced together in service is beyond what I could describe. I think if there would be like business partners, two business partners would have ever experienced that, this is like total trust. You could just total trust.
Yeah, you recognize also the business is not about business, but it's about love ultimately.
Yeah. I mean, the depth of real brotherhood, sharing a wife or a girlfriend or a woman together, serving together, also sisters serving together in the tantric space, this is unprecedented. Because this is in the society, this is what we fear. We fear jealousy, greed, not good enough, comparison. If it's aligned and the ego is in check, if the greedy part and the frustrated part is in check, and we're all serving the heart, it's amazing. It's about the feelings that are generated. People there, why we live because we want to be happy. We live because we want to feel amazing feelings. Now you might say, why not everybody has sex from morning to evening? Because the feeling in sexuality is so strong, it will override the ego. This is why sex is why the ego is always finding a way to push sexuality down and to it's not so important. Once a week it's okay. This is the ego fearing the power of the experience. This is what I've found.
Interesting. Yeah, that makes sense. I feel we could go on for hours, and there are branches that could lead us into even deeper rabbit holes. And I'm totally up for doing that and having more of these conversations. I feel super inspired. One more question before we close. Maybe you can give a pointer for someone who feels that their life is in the way that they've experienced coming to an end, and there's an upgrade calling. Aside the obvious of contacting you and having an experience in the spaces that you're creating, what else would you invite them to explore in order to take a first step into opening their life to this divine quality of love?
To relax and to try to stay open no matter what, and start to feel relaxation and feeling. Start to dare to feel your feelings. This is a spiritual bypassing to consider feelings non-spiritual, and why we are here. Everything is feeling. So first thing is like, more consciousness, more feelings. Try to be more aware of your feelings. We try to dare to be authentic. First step, honesty, courage.
Beautiful. Thank you.
And try to check, where do you make compromises in your life? It won't work.
Yeah, it reminds me to when you were saying, what can I do to awaken the Kundalini? It's more about what can I stop doing in allowing the awakeness that is always there and the aliveness that is always there.
And surrender, I mean, what can we do? I mean, this is it's all about saying yes to love and say yes to losing control. The truth is we never had control in the first place. And this is such an obstacle, this greed to control everything. So if you really feel like, oof, I don't know anymore, then go into this. And if you feel like, but I love her, but I don't dare to tell her, you're wasting your time. Anybody you want to connect with and share love with, I would say do it today. Otherwise, life is over very soon. Why we're here, what we're here for. What's life worth living for? What kind of feeling? And you decide for yourself if sexuality and having sex, having beautiful lovemaking is a good start.
Thank you so much. This has generated a lot of beautiful feelings in my body to riff on this powerful topic with you. And I'm so appreciative of the work that you're doing and our connection. Thank you from the heart. It's really beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you, Jonathan, for the questions and for your being. Awesome. Thank you.
How can people connect with you if they want to get a taste and tap into more of the wisdom that you're holding?
I'm not actually existing at all at the moment. I do not even have a web page that's working. It's very interesting how people come to me. Yeah, you can check Facebook. I mean, that's maybe my the connection, or if you want to give a link to anybody, you can write to me or call me.
Great. So if the student is ready, the Rainer appears. I'm
sorry. Yeah, I know. You know how it is. I should do more. But you know, it's interesting. I really lost. I lost control, and I'm losing it more and more. So it's really great that you're here asking me questions, that I have somebody to talk about it.
Embodying your teachings, really being the example. It's great.
Yeah, very unprofessional setup.
How would it be otherwise? Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you for tuning in to the Soul Awakened Leadership Podcast. You will find all the links and information on today's guest in the show notes. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with a friend who might benefit from the insights. Make sure to subscribe and leave a comment or review on Spotify or any of the platforms. If you would like to find out more about my work or connect, you can visit jonathanclodt.com. That is JONATHANKLODT.com, or find me at Jonathan Claude on Instagram or Facebook.